This video is going to be my reaction to the Seattle Seahawks 41-6 win over the 49ers on Saturday night in the NFC divisional round. Look, they swarmed, covered up, attacked, blocked, and just beat up San Francisco, who already came in, kind of shorthanded. It started off with Shaheed's 95-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. I mean, at this point, the guy just made so many big plays. It's fun to watch for me, and I'm sure for Seahawks fans as well. But it's just making the price tag go up for, Seattle or wherever he ends up in 2026. I believe his contract is up. But there's a ton of guys that just made great plays throughout this game, executing their assignment, clutch in some big moments. On the defensive side, Leonard Williams, Ernest Jones IV involved with 2 turnovers. He had an interception and forced a fumble early on as Seattle took a 17-0 lead. Kenneth Walker III goes over 100 rushing yards on a night when, unfortunately, Zach Charbonnet suffered an injury. Looks like, his status for next week and beyond will be, up in the air. They overwhelmed San Francisco, finished up 41-6. First NFC Championship game, I think, for Seattle since 2014. Sam Darnold made it through the whole game, or 3 quarters, what they needed him to do. He suffered that oblique injury on Thursday in practice. He didn't have to do much, I guess, from a volume standpoint, but there were some nice throws while he was on the field in passing situations. The one that I really like is the 4-yard touchdown to JSN, and that's late in the first quarter. Man, it's kind of a low-angle throw, and what I mean by that is the ball's on the left hash, and it's a play action to his left. Sam Darnold's obviously right-handed. He's got to kind of throw it around or outside of another defender, a safety. JSN had worked his way across right to left. That one made it 17-0. It's a great catch by JSN, don't get me wrong, but Darnold moving to his left, and when you watch the broadcast angle, when you watch it live, you're like, okay, how long are we going to hold on to the football here, Sam, before we throw it? And really, it was the last second, right? Because, JSN caught it, got his knees down in bounds, just outside of the top left corner of the end zone. That pushed it to 17-0 late into the first quarter. I think, we're talking about 13-plus minutes at that point. Seahawks had went up 10-0 on their first offensive possession. Of course, they didn't take the ball after the kickoff because Shaheed took it to the house. It was a short field goal by Jason Myers that makes it 10-0 after their first possession. And then Ernest Jones IV, his first turnover that he's involved with, right? It's a strip of the tight end 88. I think it's Jake Tungus. Some real karma there in a way. Of course, he's the guy that had the game-winning touchdown on a 3rd and goal from the 3 down in the corner of the end zone. And then Jones strips him. Darnold eventually finds JSN on a 2nd and goal, pushes it to a 3-score margin, 17-0. Just a minute and 50 left in the first quarter. Darnold was, I believe, 12 of 16 or 12 of 17 passing. The 1 touchdown, 124 yards. The story of the game, obviously, is for the second matchup in a row, Seattle was able to get a lot of things done in the run game. And that was despite San Francisco kind of showing their hand early. In some of the 12 personnel or 21 personnel groups, that really wrecked San Francisco's defense in Week 18. Robert Saleh had those guys rolling up into like a 4-4 look. I mean, it really, what people generally refer to now as a stacked box. 4-4 is not a stacked box. It's just an 8-man front that's been around forever. But Kenneth Walker was still able to really thwart those looks by Salah and the 49ers defense. He had 3 touchdowns, 116 or maybe 119 yards on the ground. Seattle did force 3 turnovers, and then they didn't commit one themselves either. And to me, that's important. Just flat out give you my observation, with the teams that are out there left. The only one that I could say I suspect would have a real chance to stand up to Seattle if neither team turns the football over would be the Houston Texans. And that's because they've got an incredible defense of their own. And who knows, they may not even get past the Patriots, tomorrow in New England. But we saw the Texans come to Seattle before. And those two teams, battle it out in a game that probably was closer than it needed to be. For me personally, that's the one that I would look forward to the most, because it's got high-level defenses that can stand on their own merit. And what I mean is, even on days when the offense self-destructs, which we've seen for both of those teams at times this season, from a turnover standpoint, they can keep the team in the game. And that's why I feel comfortable, giving you my direct opinion that that's the only team I see out there remaining that in a 0-0 turnover differential could stand up and to the Seahawks defense. Of course, the defenses don't play against each other, right? Seattle finished with 175 rushing yards. Now, in their second year with Mike McDonald, already make it to an NFC Championship game and hopefully a Super Bowl. It's just a full effort by so many guys, special teams, offense, defense. I know that San Francisco had a lot of struggles with injuries coming in. That was well documented. It makes me wonder, how well documented would it be for Seattle or for other teams that I get the chance to cover, like the Ravens and the Lions. But, even during the course of the game, the physicality of Seattle, I think, showed up. McCaffrey suffered one or maybe two injuries during the course of the game. I have no idea why he's in the game, and it's 41-6 in the fourth quarter. Just doesn't make sense to me at all. Seems like dereliction of duty for, whoever's responsible over there on the San Francisco sideline, head coach and or medical staff. Tungies, however you pronounce his name, 88, he also went out and I think tried to come back once. Seattle held the 49ers to 3.9 yards per play. And now if you look at the totality of 2025 between these teams, 180 minutes of football against Kyle Shanahan's offense. Seattle's given up 26 total points, and that's come on 30 drives. Now, how many of those 30 drives have been kneel downs at the end of the second quarter, or the drives that happened tonight in the fourth quarter when the game was over? I don't know, but it's just incredible work, if you ask me. Incredible body of work by a number of guys on defense, none of which got named to first-team All-Pro. Kind of my first chance to really speak on that. Really annoying and frustrating, but thankfully at least three guys got named to the second team. Let's talk about what they did to Brock Purdy. He finished 15 of 27 passing, and that was against a ton of four-man rush schemes, obviously, right? He only generated, on those 27 passing attempts, he only generated 140 passing yards. So I think, 5.1, 5.2, somewhere in that area, yards per attempt. An extremely low number that is actually higher than the 3.03 he put up in the Week 18 home loss to the Seahawks on January 3rd. That four-man pass rush is something that very few have been able to solve, and tonight it often resulted in just no good option for Purdy or for Shanahan from a play-calling standpoint. Some of the quick throws over the middle to running backs or maybe tight ends, and then two of the across-the-body throws from Purdy in the first half after he'd scrambled and kind of moved around to his right. Tom Brady was talking about, they were ill-advised. I would agree with him on at least one of them, but in both situations, the tight end was open. Let's look at what Seattle's been able to do to Brock Purdy in 2025. Week 1, the loss at home, he's 26 of 35, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. 3 weeks ago, in the regular season finale, he's 19 of 27 passing, so excellent completion percentage, but for only 127 yards, so even less yards per attempt than we had here tonight. 1 interception as well. This evening, 15 of 27, 140, and 1 pick. If you add all that up for 2025, you get 60 for 89 passing, so that's 69%, or 67%, excuse me. That's not bad. But you got 4 interceptions to go with the 2 touchdowns. And the key here is only 544 passing yards. So the way that shakes down, if I did my math, specifically my division correctly, is 6.11 yards per attempt against Seattle in 2025. Now, 2 seasons ago, Brock Purdy led the league at yards per attempt at 9.6. What this really reminds me of is a dynamic that showed up in 2022 when Mike McDonald was the defensive coordinator for his first season in Baltimore, whereby they held down Joe Burrow from a yards per attempt standpoint, put the quarterback in a ton of decisions post-snap. And that 4-man rush scheme probably makes it a little more difficult for the quarterback because, A, there's so many players to read, and it's not as simple as, a 5-man rush and a zone blitz coming out of it. Or, one of my favorite rushes is a 5-man rush. It's 2 deep, 4 under. Didn't really see that tonight. McDonald and Aiden Durde didn't have to go to that. The point is, as it relates to Brock Purdy or Joe Burrow and other quarterbacks as well, force the quarterback to, maybe leave himself open to criticism by the coach if he's not consistently taking the first open guy in the read. And that's worked to perfection in this matchup. The week 1 loss is an outlier because I think Purdy throws for 277. But the reality is, if Seattle's offense doesn't fumble twice in the fourth quarter that day, one by JSN and one by Sam Darnold, the Seahawks, quite frankly, could have swept this matchup in 2025. Switching over to the offense side a little bit, Cooper Kupp played a role here tonight, man. 5 catches for 60 yards. I think it's 5 catches on 5 targets as well. The big one was a 20-yard catch, a 21-yard catch, I think, actually, against a cover 2. It's on Seattle's second drive. Darnold had been sacked here. It's still in the first quarter, I should say. Darnold had been sacked. It's a really poor job, I think, in pass pro from Kenneth Walker. It's a 1st and 10 play action. Mustafa, the safety, blitzes, and he gets past Walker, kind of overwhelms him. So it's a sack, a 10-yard loss, kind of a violent finish to the play from Mustafa. I think Darnold kind of fell on the football. The very next snap is Darnold finding Kupp on a 2nd and 20 for 21 yards. It was critical, if you ask me, because 4 snaps later, he hits JSN in the back left corner of the end zone, that 4-yard touchdown on a play action to make it 17-0. Kupp also earlier had 2 catches on a 2nd and 10 situation. I think one of them was 2nd and 10 and one of them was 2nd and 8. But in both of those, he catches the ball and gets within 1 yard of the first down. One of them set up a tush push or tight end sneak from Barner. The second one was a conversion, I think, on a 3rd and 1. I can't remember exactly who it was. Shaheed clearly is a guy who can push this team over the top. Just because anytime he touches the football, he can take it to the house. The kick return for a touchdown was a great job, a great scheme. I saw 2 double teams there, but one of the double teams is like a combo / chip double team. It's on the right-hand side as Shaheed catches the ball and works up to, a little bit towards the middle, but middle right return. I'll definitely do a film study video on that one. I've actually done 2, I believe, film study videos of special team stuff related to Shaheed and the Seahawks this year, so you're welcome to check those out. One of them was Shaheed's kick return, I think, to open the 3rd quarter earlier in the season, and then a block kick by Julian Love as well. But another play that was clutch, and I want to mention and talk about here on the offensive side, was Shaheed's 30-yard gain on a reverse in the 2nd quarter. Look, the 49ers had closed to 17-6 at this point. I think the ball snapped with like 2:45, 2:48 left in the 2nd quarter. It's a 1st and 10. Seattle's got the ball on their own 34-yard line. The 49ers controlled this quarter, man. 23 plays had been run by the time Seattle gets the ball with their lead cut to 17-6. In that quarter, of the 23 plays that had been run, 20 of them was by the 49ers offense. They controlled the ball. The dynamic, the game flow, if you will, changed during the 2nd quarter. It absolutely did. San Francisco just wasn't able to get a touchdown on either case, right? So it's still 17-6. And this reverse, I think, returned things to normal. Think of it this way. The 49ers are going to get the ball first to start the 3rd quarter. And if they get a stop here, right, about 2:45, 2:48 as the ball snapped, it's a 1st and 10. So if they're able to get a stop, they get the ball back at some point, a little bit of time left in the 2nd quarter. In addition, getting the ball to begin the second half, you're looking at, could be 17-12, could be 17-13, even there's a scenario by which the 49ers could get a couple of touchdowns or a field goal and a touchdown out of it, 17-16, or even take the lead. But the point is, this reverse to Shaheed also came after Charbonnet had just got hurt on the previous play, and it looked like he was really hurt. So that snap, the reverse to Shaheed, there's a lot going on there. First of all, the 3rd string running back is in, and then Kubiak goes 12 personnel on it, and it's important here to note he put both tight ends to the field. Shaheed was the ex-receiver into the boundary. So the reverse goes to the field behind those 2 tight ends. So Kubiak was setting up, 2 better blockers than receivers if he went 11 personnel in that group. Great play call. Great decision to get the ball in Shaheed's hands. Great usage of the field and the personnel So I think that was a great call, and it settled things down because the very next snap came from the 49ers 36-yard line. So you're right at or approaching field goal range, I guess I should say. Totally flipped the dynamic. The 49ers, weren't going to be able to double up and maybe get to within, 17-12, 17-13, 17-16, whatever. Another critical factor here is that reverse to Shaheed set him up to where a 3rd and 10 with just inside 2 minutes left in the second quarter, Darnold finds a Bobo into the boundary for 16 yards. And that was a really great play call. Shows the trust that Darnold has in Bobo. I think it's only his 3rd catch of the regular season. I've said twice in recent videos, I feel like Bobo's a guy that in a different situation or with more opportunities, he could absolutely put up 30, 35, 40 catches, if he got enough opportunities. That's not going to happen in Seattle with the weapons that are there. What I like about this play call, it's the 3rd and 10, completion to Bobo into the boundary. He beats the corner across his face over the middle in a one-on-one situation because San Francisco is bringing pressure. I think they're bringing 5, or maybe 6. What I really like about this one, if I marked it or identified it correctly, it's a 0-1 personnel group. I didn't see a running back on the field. It looked like to me you had 4 receivers and 1 tight end on the field, which is very rarely seen. It goes for 16 yards. Bobo took a big hit at the end of it. Thankfully, was able to hold on to the ball. And eventually, Kenneth Walker gets his first touchdown. It's the one that's, cutting back right to left. It breaks a tackle as well. And that makes it 24-6 at the half. It really was over there, but I'm tracking some plays, or trying to point out, I guess, on that drive that were kind of a domino effect. The reverse to Shaheed, the 3rd and 10 completion to Darnold, or from Darnold to Bobo, and then it leads to the first touchdown by Walker. I think that whole sequence was huge. The 49ers had some things developing. 2 10-play drives in the second quarter that resulted in field goals, fortunately. They were sandwiched around a 3-and-out by Seattle's offense. Those plays may not get a ton of attention, right? Because Shaheed, Shaheed, the first kickoff return, taking it back to the house. The interception by Ernest Jones, a forced fumble by Ernest Jones. The Leonard Williams sack on a 4th down. I think Shaheed and Bobo and then Darnold as well deserve some credit here. Things, of course, got out of control in the third quarter, right? Seattle's defense forced 2 turnovers on downs, 4 and outs, I guess, in both cases. Ernest Jones IV took the ball away with the interception over the middle of the field, and they put together leads of 27-6 and then 34-6 on Walker's second touchdown run. Interestingly, at the point when Walker runs in around left side for a 15-yard score, it's a 12 personnel group, and Mike McDonald and those guys have chosen to take Charles Cross out of the game. So, it's 27-6 at the time that ball is snapped. Still, the 49ers are within striking distance, but I credit and praise McDonald and Kubiak and everyone on that staff for saying, okay, we should win this game. There's no reason for us to allow Charles Cross to get hurt or re-injured. If I'm understanding it correctly, and I may not be, feel free to let me know in the comment section if I've misinterpreted Mike McDonald's comments on it post-game. But I credit those guys for saying there's no reason for us to let Charles Cross get re-injured or hurt in a situation that's 27-6 or possibly getting ready to be 34-6. So they took him out, and it was, I guess at this point, you'd consider him the third-string left tackle in. Looked like he got a pretty good block. 2 tight ends over there to that side as well, and that one made it 34-6. We knew that it was over, but then the second turnover on downs happens near the end of the third quarter. I think that's the Leonard Williams sack, and Walker adds his third score in the fourth. Clearly at that point, things were obviously over, even though they had really been decided, I think, 12 to 15 minutes of gameplay before that. Whole thing obviously, kind of points back to the special teams touchdown to open the night, but as well as, being a byproduct of a defense that can stop or slow down the run, make things extremely difficult, while only having to allocate a 4-man rush to do so. Now, San Francisco did get to 108 rushing yards on the night, but A, most of that is from Purdy, 35 yards on scrambles, and then B, 39 yards of that occurred in the fourth quarter after the score was already swelled to 41-6. Christian McCaffrey had 16 touches, I believe 79 yards. so not very effective overall. Like I said, in the lead-in, San Francisco only averaged 3.9 yards per play. Overall, Williams had that sack on fourth down in the third quarter. I thought DeMarcus Lawrence was spectacular. The early fourth down stop in the first quarter, he wins his block against the right tackle. It's a 4th and 1. And the 49ers go with a unique kind of fullback to tailback option play. So Purdy snaps the ball from under center, hands it to Juszczyk, the fullback, and then he's setting up an option play, but it's into the boundary. And that's the part that I'll be a little critical of Shanahan for this play call. You know, everybody's right-handed, or 83% of the population, 84, something like that, are right-handed, so that most football players are going to be, obviously. You might not have the right call here with the ball on the right hash, to be honest with you, in that it's a goal line look for the Seahawks. My suspicion is that Shanahan was making that call as if Lawrence would be kind of kicked down inside in a goal line look that's typical for Seattle. I've done a couple of videos on it. If you're interested at this point, I'll link them up here so you can see what I'm talking about. Might be a good idea to maybe pause the video, go back and watch that to look at the alignment, and then return to this one, because what happens as the 49ers start to shift around, DeMarcus Lawrence widens up. So he kind of, quote, shouldn't be there. According to the scheme, the right tackle should be easily able to pin him down or reach him. But by alignment, he would have been reached in their typical goal line look. DeMarcus Lawrence widens up, and that really screws the whole daggone thing up. The previous snap had been a 3rd and 1 where Byron Murphy and Nwosu stacked up Christian McCaffrey, setting up that 4th down. I think DeMarcus Lawrence was a spectacular, like I said. I did not think as highly early in the game of Nick Emenwari's coverage. I thought he was too deep twice as a dime linebacker, and one time, kind of lost coverage of the tight end 88, whose name I can't pronounce, on one of the balls that Purdy threw, across his body. But Emenwari had a great quarterback pressure where I thought he got held, showed tremendous effort on a pursuit play, like a wide zone run away from him, and he, of course, got a fumble recovery late. Witherspoon finishes with, I think, 7 tackles. And this just really, against this 49ers team, it wasn't a complicated formula for Seattle. Number one, don't turn the football over, right? Force the 49ers into deep water with, testing their depth, which was already stretched thin coming in. Slow down or stop the run game. And like I said, 39 of the 49ers' 108 rushing yards happened in the fourth quarter after the game was decided. So I think that total is really misleading. I think a big part here was try not to re-aggravate or stress Darnold. Oblique injuries are awful. I've had one myself before. If you have, then you know what I'm talking about. To get out of here with Darnold being healthy and not re-aggravating is great. Charbonnet's status, to me, it looked pretty bad, but McDonald said they're going to image it, I would guess on Sunday or Monday. I hope he's okay, but my suspicion is Charbonnet probably will be out next week. That would be my guess. Cross, it was described as by McDonald that they were out of caution, and I think that's great, man, because the game flow, the differential at that point is 27-6. Just a smart decision. And you have to compare it a little bit to Shanahan and the medical staff for the 49ers. With McCaffrey, going out of the game twice, I believe, coming back in and getting a touch at 41-6, and it looked like suffering another injury going off field. That was surprising, and I would be complaining about it if I was a 49ers fan. But hopefully there's good news on Charbonnet. That one seems tough to me. As far as the rematch goes, or possible rematch with the Rams, they've got to go up there and win in the cold against the Bears. I do think they're capable because Chicago's defense is so reliant on turnovers. I like the Bears group on defense. I have said that for 2 or 3 years, and Lions fans, didn't really like it. When I say I like them, it means they're athletic, they get after the football, they're tough. Obviously, they're never out of the game with Ben Johnson as the head coach, play caller, and Caleb Williams as the quarterback. But their defense seems to be reliant on turnovers. And so when I say the Rams are fully capable of going up there and getting a win, it's built on that foundation that Chicago, if they don't force turnovers, I think they could be in trouble. I think it could end up being a shootout. In my opinion, I'll just tell you flat out, I think the Seahawks are the best team left here, obviously in the NFC and probably overall. But next week is going to be a huge challenge, whether it's the Rams, who would clearly be motivated to come back to Seattle and try to finish off the Seahawks. They had a big lead last time. But based on what I've seen so far, the Rams defense has struggled in the last 2 months of the season in a lot of ways. Points per game allowed, different yards per game allowed as well. Chicago does force turnovers, so that matchup could be interesting from that standpoint. I think it's easy to talk about turnovers before a football game, obviously. They're a real key with this Seattle team, in my opinion, because of the quality of the defense, number one. The quality of the coaching overall, the big play ability that you have for guys like Shaheed, Kenneth Walker look fantastic. I don't know what you as a Seahawks fan would prefer. Probably the Bears would be my guess. Not that anyone would be scared of the Rams. That's not what I'm trying to insinuate. But just to witness a divisional rival season end, or to see them be eliminated, basically. As a Ravens fan, seeing the Steelers get eliminated last week was fun to watch. So I get it. Who do you want to see? Some of you may want to see the Rams, and that's fine too. I have confidence with Seattle against every single team left in these playoffs. The only team that I think could physically stand up to them, the brand of football that Seattle's capable of playing, when they don't turn the football over and they get big plays like they did tonight. In this case, Shaheed is the Houston Texans. And that's contingent upon their quarterback not turning the football over like he did or nearly did multiple times last week in Pittsburgh. So if you guys enjoyed this reaction video, please let me know in the comment section, number one. It's a little bit abbreviated because of how late it is upon the time that I record this. It was a fun game to watch, one that we pretty much knew was over, I think, at halftime, but definitely at some point during the third quarter, overwhelmed the 49ers for the second time in a 3-week stretch. It'll be really interesting to see how Shanahan, Brock Purdy, and those guys try to attack the Seahawks defense next year. But there's a lot of football to be played between now and then. Hopefully, specifically, 2 more games for Seattle to see them get to another Super Bowl. I think you guys got a great shot, and it's definitely one that I'd like to try to chronicle and do some film study videos of tomorrow into Monday before leading up to next week's previews. Appreciate you guys' time, man. If you enjoyed the video, please let me know in the comment section, number one. Number two, if you think other Seahawks fans would like to hear my thoughts on the 41-6 win over the 49ers, putting your team back in the NFC Championship game for the first time in, I think, 11 years, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.